afternoon, Google. Okay, great, good that everybody is awake. So welcome to the talks at Google on personal branding and negotiation. We are really glad to have an esteemed panel here. I'm going to quickly introduce. This event is also co-sponsored by the Women at Google. We've been trying to get this audience for a long time, so thank you so much for making it here. A quick introduction on all of them. So Lakshmi right next to me is had 2 decades in marketing, was a venture capitalist and is an entrepreneur now. She started Inc. India in partnership with TED and has worked with Intel, Global Capitalist Partners and American Indian Foundation. In AIF, she founded the AIF's Digital Equalizer program, which offered technology education to 80,000 children and 20,000 school teachers here in India. I don't know how many of you remember the massive TED that happened in 2009 in Mysore in the Infosys campus. She actually brought TED to India. And also some of the wonderful talks. I know Sunita Krishnan's talk, Pranam Mistri's talk was very popular, Devidat Patnaik as well. And she's been responsible for all the talks and storytelling that some of these esteemed speakers have done. She claims that one of her favorite interviews, and I heard it last week, is the one with Andy Grove, who's the co-founder of Intel. So welcome, Lakshmi.
Thank you.
We have Anu next. So Anu Acharya is a name well known in Hyderabad. She's the CEO of Mapmygenome and an alumnus of IIT Kharagpur as well as an MS from University of Illinois. I have read some of her articles in LinkedIn, and what really amazed me is a poem that she's written on cancer mutation with chromosomal combinations. So people don't think that art and science go together, but she's a living example of art and science together, so great. Storytelling and writing is her forte. She'll talk a little bit about it as well. And she has several feathers in her cap, being named as one of the youngest global leaders by the World Economic Forum. Welcome. So we have Ritu Srivastava next. She's a founder of a health and weight loss coaching tech startup called Obino. It's a 4.5-star rated app on Google Play. And so you should definitely go and check it out. She's had an illustrious career spanning from radio, where she had content for FM 93.5. She's also led brand for Bharti Airtel and is now an entrepreneur. Welcome, Ritu. And I don't know if Arijit needs introduction, but I'll still do the honors. Arijit?
It's fine.
No, we'll do it. So Arijit is the director of the Global Campaign Operations, which is now spread across 15 countries. He's been with Google for the past 10 years and leads a team of digital marketing professionals and engineers focusing on ensuring that clients' marketing objectives are met with the right product expertise. So thank you, Arijit, for being here.
Thank you.
So we'll start the introduction the Google way with a fun fact. So we usually do this in Google. So we'd like to hear one less known or a fun fact from each of you. Lakshmi?
God, everything about me, I wear my life on my sleeve, so I don't know what about me. I used to act in theater. I did my MBA with a minor in theater. And I thought that I would work at Intel for 2 years, save enough money, and move to LA and become an actress. But I fell in love with technology and kept thinking, okay, next year, and then realized at 28 that I'm too old to be an actress. So
That's good.
So I think I was once caught by the university police. Now, if you're wondering why, we were in graduate school organizing Holi, and we messed up a brand new dance floor. So I'll tell the whole story at some other point.
Well, for someone who runs a weight loss coaching startup, and hopefully it doesn't show when you look at me, I can out-eat anyone in this room. So when I got married and we went on our honeymoon, my husband, who had not seen my true colors, actually belonged to Kerala, born and brought up in Kerala. And my dad had organized my favorite dinner for me, which was like this huge heaping mound of Kerala rice and 3 big tiffin dabbas of various fish curries. And my husband watched this horrified fascination. I proceeded to eat my way through the whole thing. So after that, he's like, not good, not good. Yeah, but don't publicize.
But you got
that
your
much.
proteins.
Yes.
Arijit?
I don't know, anything is left of my non-known fact. I can carry. So I think I have given it all. So maybe one, continuing on the university police, I was detained for a few hours in a police station. And it was not as trivial as messing up with a dance floor. It was a little more serious than that, but I'll leave it at that.
Oh, no.
It was a good experience.
We want to know about it. So, okay, so moving on to personal branding, Anu, I'll start with you. I know you started in a regular IT and then went to do a data analyst job, but now you build a strong brand for yourself, probably the most recognized brand in the field of genetic research in India. So how did you evolve your personal branding, one, and then how do you tie it to the organization that you lead now? And I know that you write a lot, so how does that help with building this identity?
Sure. So I think in the end, I believe that any brand, whether it's a personal or a company, is when you are authentic and true to yourself. So I think what I've done all my life is just to figure out who I am, and so part of our identity as Mapmygenome is also know yourself. But it was through a process of understanding and discovering myself that I think I evolved. In the beginning, I would say when we started Awesomum, which was my first startup, it was primarily to say how do you build the business up in an area that we don't know anything about. So part of it was building connections, building relationships without expecting something from them. And I think I started working on that in the beginning. But over a period of time, I think it sort of evolved. You start doing what you really enjoy most, which is actually saying what do you get, what do you like about that particular relationship. So when it was a personal relationship, it was very clear what could be expected. But building relationships on, let's say, LinkedIn or social media was a very different thing. So over a period of time, I think that evolved. And I also am a very quirky and a very strange, I have my own strange habits. But I started picking on that, right? So you say, if you're going to, I used to write limericks in school, but I used that as the process of understanding new subjects. So science was one of the first things. So when we bought a company in the US, I was trying to explore something. In order to summarize, I would start writing. So part of it was just being myself, but just expressing. And I think as we started growing, and it evolved. And so I've never really planned to build a story around it, but I think it was just being who I am. And I think I continue to do that. So I think it's just that now that you've been doing it so many times, people start seeing patterns in it. So that's about it. But I think in the end, it was just me.
Great. So Anu, you said know yourself, and I know Ritu, you speak a lot about your health transformation story from being an RJ to really being an entrepreneur of a health startup. And to Anu's point of knowing yourself, you've always spoken about how brand should be a reflection of your value system. Do you want to talk about that?
So when I was part of the brand team at Airtel, we actually delved really deep into what a brand is. And in the most simple manner that you can break it down, a brand is a series of associations that people have of you. They may be visual, they may be thought process based, but they associate you with a certain set of characteristics. And that's how personal brands are built. And I think when she said know yourself, she really put her finger on it. Because when you build yourself as a brand, and as an entrepreneur, you have to do that every day, because in the early stages, investors, customers invest on the founder. They trust the founder. There is no company, there is hardly any team. They're all placing their bets on you. And it is that intangible quality, which is your personal brand, which actually leads to that investment, whether it's of a small ticket size as a customer or as a large ticket size as an investor. And what I realized is, you may want to come across in your personal brand as sophisticated and urbane and witty, but you may actually be that person who can sit and have 4 potfuls of fish curry at a go. And you should celebrate that, because that is what makes you unique. That is what makes you stand out in a cluttered marketplace. So I'm decently dressed today, but I have a terrible sense of fashion. My own husband cringes at my dressing choices, and I've always been like that. I've been that way since my college days. But for me, And for my investors, that's come to stand for how little the regular pursuits of looking good and vanity mean to me. And that says something about who I am. It may not be something that they aspire to or understand, but it makes me very clearly identifiable as a kind of person. And that's what we should do. We should look at what's core to us, not stuff that we really like about ourselves, but which we really are. Take that, spin it, and make it work for you.
Perfect. So you said, yeah. So you brought a very good point. It is like, know what you are at the core and celebrate yourself. So those are, I think, fundamentals on what we base our brand. So Arijit, moving to something which is close to all of the Googlers is working out of a remote office, and that often comes up. We've heard a lot of inspiring branding stories from outside of Google, but close to home, what's the magic mantra in Google for especially growing businesses from a remote location and letting the headquarters know that this is the brand of India? How do you go about it?
Yeah, and my answer won't be like as much of a thought through strategy, because when we started, we never really thought that this is what we will achieve. But I think it was a lot around, taking in a lot of the opportunities that came in the way. But a few things that, we need to be aware when you are dealing with a remote location, and especially Google being a very headquarter-centric company. Anyone, and this is not just from India, but maybe in Dublin or in Singapore or anywhere else, dependability factor has to be very high. So the company is trusting the region or the operations with someone who needs to be very dependable, aligned, understand the signals, and react or act fast, right? So that's one, and I think over a period, and these are things which might sound as I'm sounding a bit wise, but it's all looking backwards. What I've understood from my, from others, we have this fantastic Google guys feedback and all that, is a few things that have stood out for me is dependable, perseverant, and grounded. I think these are some of the things, and again, back to the point, that Anu raised was, be what you are. Many times at Google, we have seen different kind of leadership, and we aspire to or get inspired by certain kinds of leadership. But what I have reconciled pretty early is be what you are. And these are the traits that define me, and these are the traits that perhaps help me function in a global setup much effectively.
And that's fair, because everybody has their own strengths and areas of development, and really playing to your strength and being authentic is probably the way to go. You also spoke about reliability and being disciplined, which I think is core of working from a remote office. So we'll talk a little more about it, but back to Lakshmi. And Lakshmi, you worked with brands on people and especially storytelling, and you self-describe yourself as a people collector. So we all would like to know, what does the term people collector mean? And how do you associate a personal brand with storytelling? Because that's the key to really your personal brand.
One of the things I love doing is working with people on telling their stories. And as everybody said, you want, in the conversations, you look for what makes them them, and you want to keep that, because it's not about making them all sound great. It's about making them all sound like themselves and be comfortable with it. So there is one thing I learned actually I learned so much about what I do in my theater than I did in my MBAs. So one of the things they teach you in theater is called playing the opposites, So it's sort of, if you're really angry, you yell and scream, it's one level of being angry. But if you're really like quiet and then you say, you know what, I'm going to kill you tomorrow. It's like, it's more scary, So I've really learned that, because it's sort of, as a person, especially when I went to Portland, Oregon, where 92% white people, and here I am like this little brown thing. I was the only Indian in like the entire, my professors have ever worked with, I think. And they couldn't place me because here I'm doing MBA while I do my theater and creative writing. And they thought Indians were like very meek and quiet, and here I was like not quite meek and all that stuff. So I'm like playing, so it took me a while to figure out, but I think playing the opposites is an amazing way of building your brand. Not playing, but you are multiple things. And it's okay to be multiple things. I may wear a sari and I might swear. I may wear very Western outfit and be completely traditional. So we sometimes often confuse what we try to be with what we are, and I think it's okay to be opposite.
So, and I'll open it to all four of you. Can you give me an example of where this personal branding and authenticity, like all of you talked about, really has helped you in your career at one point where you said, no, I'm going to completely shun what I'm pretending and being my normal, and this is what I am, this is my brand, and it worked for you. So do you have examples?
So I'll take a shot at it. So when we raised our first round of funding, third round of funding from Roundglass Partners, they're a US-based healthcare VC, we got about 7 minutes with the founder of the fund. We drove all the way across town, a whole phalange of us, and there were like 30 of them, and we were all expecting to make a pitch, and he just walked over and he said, why don't we take a walk? And my entire team was holding their Macs and their presentations, and we just took a walk. And in that 5 minutes, he said, tell me your story. So for a second, I was lost. I had the entire 10-slide pitch deck and how much money I wanted to raise. And he's like, tell me your story. And I just told him my story of coming down from 75 kilos back to 50 kilos and why I felt this was something that I could do for the rest of my life, because I'd been through a really shitty phase in my life and I wanted to make sure other people didn't have it that shitty. He gave me like exactly 7 minutes. At the end of it, he says, great, when are we signing the papers? I was like, I really didn't have an answer. And I think at moments like that, when you don't have a chance to prepare, when you're expecting something to happen and something totally different happens, you are what you are because there's nothing else you've prepared to be. And that is the truest reflection of who you are, and people who can see that and judge it and want to be part of that journey, I think they're very lucky to find those people.
And that brings a good point, Ritu, because it's also about self-realization, because it's very important that all of us understand what we stand for, and it's important for us not to pretend to be what we are, and that realization often we don't spend enough time introspecting and figuring out what is our strength, right? I know you spoke about means to an end, because you spoke about, okay, personal branding is the end, but there is a way your writing has helped you get to that end. What are some of the other things that you have used, or tools that you've used, or processes you've used to really get to your end goal?
I think, for me, the last 16 years at least has been primarily about my 2 startups. I also have 2 babies, but grown-up babies now. But I think for me it was always about saying, you're very engrossed in the business, but you were more engrossed in saying how do you build a team and so on, right? So part of it was building that culture. And it's strange because you don't realize it, but it sort of has an effect on the rest of the people that you have around you. Mm-hmm. And so I was primarily busy in creating that and not trying to put on any different shades to myself, and just being who I am. When I interview people, you interview them as normal people and not have the same set of questions and those kind of things. So I think part of your identity sort of builds over to the business as well. And whether it is Mapmygenome, where currently I think we have some brilliant people also, as part of the team, and all of that I think comes in because you truly want people to become, to create something that you wish you can transform the world and to be able to do that. And I think part of that has to do with how you are as I know, as long as you are open to being saying that I can be completely exposed and still people will want to work for me. I think that's when you can build a good team, right? Wow. So I think you need to be honest with yourself and you need to be open and transparent. And I think the moment you do that, I think part of your brand builds around that.
Yeah, and a lot of that reflection I see in your writing, because I think you've used that as a means to really convey Absolutely. Your branding and your message.
So now I've started writing now. I'm not necessarily, so for instance, I have political views, I'll have views on science, I have views on feminism, I'll have views on a lot of different things. initially I used to be an instigator. So I would love to get 5 people together and just thode si machis laga do, right? and get people to start talking, because when they are in that heated moment, especially when it comes to things like politics or cricket or whatever it is that people have polarizing views on, I think all you need is a little list. Later on I realized that my job was, it's fun to be an instigator, but it's probably more fun if you can actually put some of what you really think about something, but do it in a not a way to really get people to start fighting with each other.
Non-disruptive.
How do you come up with something creative and something that we can all start thinking positively about, right? So I think I have gone through a lot of transformation in my own life. So my writings also sort of reflect that. So, I've written a book on poetry, but if I read through what I wrote in 2010 versus what I write in 2016, I think that shows the transformation of what I have become. And you don't realize it at that point. But part of it is that one of the things is that, when I write, I can always go back and see how was I as a person at that point, right? And then you can verify it with the other people who were there around, because you might not be the best judge. So I think I've gone through some of that phases where you're saying, do you enjoy people fighting around you and doing that instigation, versus saying, fine, if let's say everything is wrong in the universe today, how do you find the right things in people to be able to say, can we build a better world? So I think that's my transformation in terms of building the brand that we are building.
Great.
Sorry, I was going to say, I'll say one thing, because I worked in a big company in Intel and you're at Google. I found the best lesson about building who you are from my boss, because in India you're taught that if someone would come to me and say, Lakshmi, you did a great job doing that, I would say, oh no, I didn't do it. It's like Sam's idea, or like he really helped me, or whatever. So at Intel we had something called ranking and rating, where all the bosses have to get together and then they have to fight for which one of their people should get better ranking. So my boss came to me and said, you make it so difficult for me to fight for you, because anytime I say, look what Lakshmi did, they say, no, she didn't do it. Sam did it, or, whatever. So she said, can you please, when someone gives you a compliment, can you please say thank you and shut up? Don't say anything else, because otherwise you're always this martyr, like, oh, wow, they all did it. And like, suddenly you realize, oh, they all left me. And like, here I'm sitting around being the martyr, So I think especially women, maybe I'm generalizing to a lot, Indian women have this whole martyr syndrome of, I have to be the one to take care of my in-laws. I have to be the one to take care of kids. I'm the one who has to stay home. I'm the one who has to do everything. I just get rid of that crap. And, and so I always say there are 3 things, is that you need to show up, because unless you show up, nothing will come your way. Next thing, you have to speak up. You have to ask for it. When I brought TED to India, I went to Chris and I said, we should do this. He was like, well, okay. But if I didn't ask, it's not an idea that would have come to him. And then shut up. We should know, show up, speak up, shut up. We should know when to do what, and we always do the wrong things at the wrong time a lot of times. So know when to show up, know when to speak up, and know when to shut up. So I think that builds who you are. And the times when you speak up, everybody may not like you, but that's okay. The people who like you will really stick with you. The others don't matter anyway.
So the 3 S. So all of us take back the 3 S. Speak up, show up, speak up, or shut up. That's a great thing. Arijit,
Amazingly, I was reflecting on that, and sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's not just a girl thing.
That's why
it's an Indian.
It's a big, it's a boy thing. Typically in our middle class upbringing, you're supposed to be always look up to your elders, treat everyone with reverence, and sometimes it just doesn't work. Right. And my first brush was that coming from a very middle class background, I was put into sales, and that too up north in the country, where nobody will even look up to you unless you gave a few expletives, right? So, it was like a cultural shock and a functional shock as well for me in sales. And then you have to show up to make your sale. You have to speak up to ask for the money. Yeah. And then finally you have to shut up once you've got the order. Because after that, if you start justifying, then you are resulting in post-purchase dissonance. Yeah. Right?
It's a good 3 mantras, absolutely great. Thank you, Lakshmi, for that. So, Arijit, you also spoke about consistency, reliability, dependability for the brand as a brand for the region. How did you go about doing it? Was it once you identified that dependability is what Hyderabad will stand for? How did you go about really building that top of mind recall?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it from and it has evolved over a period of time. If I were to look at overall Google's business or global operations from India, I think initially when we started off the operations, it was more like providing scale. We were growing crazy. We just ran out of people in the Bay Area, right? And I think that's how we came to India, and just to take care of the growth and the scale. But that can't be a value proposition beyond a point, and very soon we realized that, and then we started consolidating and looking as what are we here for? So it was a bit of a soul searching after having expanded the operations. And that's wherein I think the realization happened that you need to be very clear of the value that you're providing as an organization. And over a period, I think we shifted it from just providing resources and providing transactions and providing support to really pivoting around expertise and what we uniquely bring for Google in India, through India, right? And I think the answer was very evident for us, right? We have this amazing talent that's available in our country. And Google is all about a lot around analytical skills, around data-driven decisions, and we have that in plenty. So if you have processes that effectively leverages this, on top of it, the fabulous technical talent that we have a very winning proposition. So I think that's been the journey, and whether you take whichever function, whether it is GTech or Trust and Safety or SMB, we have been trying to leverage that and get it to the maximum.
Yeah. And that's a fair point, because we always tell the teams that your personal branding first starts with you individually, then it goes to your team, and then it goes to the larger organization. So you consistently have to build on all the three. So good point on that, Ritu. You keep talking about using digital media consistently to check on your brand and your individual brand as well as your organization's brand. And as a part of my work in trust and safety, our teams constantly educate people on leaving a digital footprint. What are you really leaving behind when you're talking? Because we educate kids in schools, and we say that you're leaving something on your Facebook or on your Google Plus account or anywhere, LinkedIn, and 7-8 years later, there is a recruiter who's doing a background check on you, and they find that you have very polarized political view or very polarized individual views. And then they say, oh, this is not going to match to our organization culture. So we really teach people on how they shouldn't be leaving a digital footprint that does not work for them. So how do you evaluate that?
So a couple of years ago, I actually came to the realization that Facebook is the biggest brand building tool available to you for your personal branding space. Every photograph you put out there, every status update, every comment on a colleague's or a friend's or a family member's post is sending the world a very clear view of who you are and what you believe in. We share stuff randomly. I recently got an update from Facebook that in the last year I've shared some 9,000 things. I was like, where do I get the time to do it? But I've done it. The problem is we don't realize that there is now no boundary between your professional life and your personal life. It is all one fluid, seamless whole, and everybody at all times is judging you. So, only the paranoid survive. Anybody and everybody who is looking at your life, whether it's your best friend, your spouse, your children, your colleagues, your workmates, your investors, they are all watching you. Do not think anything you put out there is being ignored. And therefore, you have a duty to yourself to speak, show up and speak up, but most importantly, to shut up. I think in personal branding on the digital space, one of the strongest things that you can do is stop yourself. Stop yourself from sharing that status update. Stop yourself from sharing that personal low that you're going through. Stop yourself from calling your husband out when he has pissed you off, because the world is watching. The moment you realize that the world is watching and it will have repercussions, you will automatically start controlling what you put out there, and controlling is the first aspect to building your brand.
That's a good point. So Lakshmi, coming back to you, I know you work with a lot of people in the industry in building their brand and helping them make a story, and they're all, some of them are working in organizations, some of them in NGOs. How do you feel, what is the common story in terms of building their brand for everyone?
I think, as I said, one of the things I always look for is what is it that makes them them? Actually, when we were all kids, we were just perfect. We are just ourselves. And then through the years, you learn what not to do. And then we have this facade of, like for example, I'm sitting in this chair. I don't know if I should sit like this, or sit like this, or sit like this. Which, you're like, your mind is wandering through 10 different things because you want to look perfect, right? And what I try to work with people on, be comfortable with your imperfections, because that's your greatest tool. The point is that we focus on trying to be perfect so much that we are not in love with who we are. And I think, in my conversations with people, I try, because it happens with everyone. You talk to them enough first, like there is this very focused, I'm going to talk about the 4 ways to blah or 6 ways to blee or something like that. And then, you kind of get a little, and then they suddenly, something gets where they become children when they're talking about it. Oh, but when we were building this product, we did this and then we did that. And then you're like, that's what it is.
That's you.
The place where you become a child, you don't care what you look like or how you sound like. That's who you are. And everyone has that. You just need to find that and bring that out and say, it's okay to be like this. Yes, I know you're this big deal president or whatever, but it's okay to be that here, because that authenticity, referring back to what you were saying, it's most important. And I also tell them, this is another thing I learned in theater, is that, like, for example, if you're in a play, you forget a line or something, you're just beating yourself over the head, right? But you know what? The audience has no clue. Only you know that you missed something. So I tell them, look, what if you forget a line or whatever, nobody knows. Nobody is judging you. Just be yourself. If you forget something, just keep going. And there's a lot we can fix in editing, So it's sort of, so I think a lot of the storytelling, a lot of the personal brand building is to find that those imperfections in you, and being extremely comfortable with them and try not to be perfect, because a perfect person is the most boring to watch.
Totally agree there. Great. So I know, moving to you, I know a lot of the audience worries about negotiation, because I think this is a term, we have a lot of courses on negotiation. People say life is all about negotiation, from your kids to your organization to your managers to your peers, you're always negotiating. How did your negotiation evolve through your career? And you've spoken about something from being a selfish negotiator to a selfless negotiator. So do you want to talk about that?
Certainly. So one, I'm a Marwadi, so it's in my DNA. So it's part of our upbringing. Right? But I thought maybe a couple of stories that show how I've transformed would be interesting. When I graduated from University of Illinois, in the graduate school, typically they didn't do campus placement, but during our time, I think we got, I got offers on the phone and stuff like that. But there was this one that we got on campus. It was a bank called First Chicago, and they sent a letter to 3 of us, giving us a job, right? So I don't remember, it was like $40,000 a year. I don't remember the exact figure. But anyway, so the HR sends me an email, and the other 2 people accept. I instantly responded back saying, you have no idea who you send this offer to. You have no understanding of my worth. And it was, I don't remember the exact words, but it was primarily saying that you have no clue who you are talking to. You better give me a better offer, right? And within 5 minutes, I get a call back from HR. They were shocked. They were like, we've never heard anyone say something like this before. And she called me and said, you should never say something like this, that. But by the way, my vice president wants to meet you. So I went the next day, and they increased my offer by $5,000 just because of that email. But I didn't join them anyway. But but it was, when I think back, I don't have that email. It was that time of my life when I was extremely arrogant. And it was my way of negotiating at that point. And I thought it was perfectly fine. over a period of time, I think I continue to negotiate in every form, everything. You know, I think, you know, like one of my classmates in a class on negotiation in Harvard did, we all were kept in multiple groups. When we came out, he said, my God, I thought, you know, I got the best deal here. When I come out, I find out I'm the most screwed. But, you know, but I think what I have evolved into is to be able to say that if you really want to get the best outcomes, it's more important to understand what it means to them also. So the best deals will be done if you also understand what your opponent wants. And I think that comes with a very open view of being able to do this. I've also gone in the middle through this phase where we had to deal with an investor. We were acquiring a company for which we were raising money. It was a very, very tight timeline. We were acquiring a public company. There was a certain time in which you could do it. We had no money to otherwise buy it. But the way we had to negotiate there was to walk away. And we got it. But today, I think in most cases, whether it's negotiating with an employee, whether it's negotiating with anybody, I first try to understand what it means to them. And I think once you understand them, then I think it's easy to anchor and to be able to get the right pieces in together. So I think that has shown that, you know, I've gone through the phases of life where you start with hard negotiation towards being to be able to say, how do you get the best out of everybody?
That's a good point, Anu, because a lot of time when you're negotiating and you're thinking that the opponent always has an opposing requirement, they don't. You're probably talking different languages, but you want the same thing. So really sitting and talking, having a fair dialogue helps you really achieve
Absolutely.
that. So Ritu and I were just during lunch discussing, there is a research done by a lady called Linda Babcock, who is the author of Women Don't Ask. And they find that 7% of the women attempted to negotiate a new job offer, whereas 57% of men always negotiate a job offer. So she did a little more research on why women don't negotiate, and one of the things is women feel that they suffer from a reputational risk when they negotiate. How are they perceived when they negotiate? So Ritu, what is your impression of this research?
Just to tell you that this is not something that I'm generally speaking about. In our investor portfolio, I'm one of the, as my investor puts it, one of the most chindi people. So he basically tells me in the first board meeting we had, I remember he came, we had the whole session, and then he said, you know, with all of the other portfolio companies, I've been telling them to rein in their spending. With you, I'm saying, can you please step up your spending? So I said, I will, but can you give me some more money first? And he's like, I've already given you money. I said, but I'm not comfortable spending till I have more money in the bank. So you give me money, then I'll spend. So they gave me money. See, end of it, he said, my God, you take asking for money to a whole different level. And that's when I told him, I said, I learned this in my career the hard way. Women negotiate in two ways. And there's two distinct patterns of behavior how we negotiate. You negotiate a certain way when you have something in your hand. And you negotiate a different way when you don't have something in your hand. So if you have two job offers, you see how you go and negotiate with the new guy. You'll be full bindas. Nahi chahiye teri naukri hai mere paas. It's like a full, you know, come bring it on. You don't have a job offer. You're like, sir, please, naukri de do. And the one thing that, you know, my dad always told me, he's like, always go in like you have another offer on the table, because he doesn't know you don't have another offer on the table. When you go in and say, it's not happening, he said, never say no. That's another thing women do. Women either say yes or they say no. A lot of successful negotiators never say no. They'll say, you know, I think we can do better. You know, let's work on this a little bit. They will never say no. They will never stop and walk away. They will, in her case, it worked. And, you know, touch wood, it worked. But in most cases, if you just keep the interest alive and keep pushing, you will eventually get to where you want. But most importantly, behave like you have another offer in your hand. They don't know any better.
Yeah. No, that's a very fair point, because you always have an option. If not this, you have an option. Options always come. And yeah, we tend to say a yes or a no, and we need to get into the grey zone.
I don't know why women have a problem with asking. I don't personally suffer from that problem myself.
I don't think they have a problem with asking. Sometimes there are not enough people listening.
Yeah. It is that, and the research also says, I think, they associate it with the reputational risk. Like they
No, I think it is that when a woman asks, I mean, if you ask too many times, you're called aggressive. You know, I mean, you have to deal with labels. And I think we, somewhere in the bottom of our hearts, we all want to be liked by everybody. We don't want to be called, oh, that aggressive. Whatever.
We're just very, very
so you want to be said, but she's so sweet. We want to hear those things.
Be a good girl.
Be a good girl, yeah. so
being liked is the issue.
Pardon?
Being liked.
Being liked. You want to be
Affable.
liked.
Universally liked.
I mean, mine is was always the opposite problem to her. I'm like this completely useless Telugu Brahmin, who can't ask for anything. So it's like, it's always like, oh yeah, take it. It's like, I'll do it for free. I'll just show up for free. I mean, it's sort of like this. And I learned this from somebody, one speaker I was talking to come here. And then he said, oh, I would love to come to India. And the only thing is I need $100,000 donated to my NGO. Only then I'll show up. I'm like, wow. But he was like, he's pretty, he said, it's not for me, but if and he said something very interesting. He said, if you, I'm going to say it wrong, don't do anything for money, but if you do something, you get paid. It's sort of like, you don't need to do it for it, but somebody should value your time. So I think I've learned it now. When someone asks, I say, okay, you donate something to our foundation, then I'll come. It doesn't matter, they donate 5 rupees or 500,000, it doesn't matter what. You donate, show me, and then I'll tell them that I'll see how much you think I'm worth. So it's like, I'm watching kind of a thing. But I think some of it is finding the balance. If you're the one who's like, who didn't have any fear, you have to rein in. If you're the one who's kind of very awkward asking, you should push yourself. It's amazing what you get when you ask. I'm always amazed by it. I'm like, oh, really? I mean, oh, okay.
And that's fair. We should always be asking. And it gives a worth to your work.
Sorry, and one more thing I want to say is the thing I've always learned that helps me as a tactic, pretend that you look like everybody around in the room, So if I'm in with, especially at Intel, most of the things is like 15 white guys and me, and I think I look like a white guy. I mean, I don't think I look like anything different, and I think I talk like them. And then I move into a room of, 20, 15-year-olds, I think I look like them and talk like them. So you just have to think you look like them. You don't look anything different. You're not anything different.
That's a good tip. So Arijit, this is for you, because as a business leader, you've oftentimes made offers to senior leaders in your organization, and both men and women. How many times have you seen a woman actually come up and negotiate? Is there any incident that sticks out in your mind?
Do you remember hiring her?
Very tough question.
He didn't.
First of all, I wish we were hiring more women because then the opportunity for
true.
negotiation, and that's
Absolutely.
been one of my big objectives here. But in a way, I resonate to that 57 versus 7%. I can't remember the exact stats, but men usually 9 out of 10 times has ended up in a negotiation with this thing. And each one has their own style. One will be like slamming the phone. I have also myself slammed the phone on the Google offer. So I completely resonate with it.
That is after working in North India?
So that was after. But the person of whom I slammed, and I respect her, she is currently the director of HR at Flipkart. She was the head of recruitment, and she was equally aggressive, so she didn't call back. And then I'm like, okay, something wrong happened here, right? So, but usually that's the case, that men do negotiate much more. And I wish, I think, as I was saying, that I think it comes to this anxiety maybe, or some worry factor around, oh, if I say no, what will happen? Right? Or would it be interpreted in some other way? And that's something, some of the fabulous women leaders that I have worked with, they didn't ever used to give it a damn, right? So I think that's the spirit with which we need to.
I just want to say this. I have a very, very, very esteemed colleague. She's a very senior female leader, and she always says, "I'm not in this for the money." And I so disagree. I think women, a lot of times, you'll hear this from women a lot. I'm not doing this for the money. What are you doing it for, incidentally?
You could do it for a passion, and the money is a consequence.
Yeah, so I
there's
think
nothing wrong. That's a great negotiation tactics. I'm telling you.
I don't know.
I'm not doing it for the money, but for the NGO. but 100K is the deal.
But you have to say, I'm not doing it for the money, but give me what I want. So you can't say, leave it at I'm not doing it for the money.
वहाँ पे मत रुकना.
Yeah, don't stop there. Yeah. So I
But
think
I want to say, especially for women, I've worked in the NGO sector, corporate, everything. It's very easy for them to ask for somebody else, but it's very difficult for them to ask for themselves. It's just something, not some women, this is like a psychiatrist saying, my friend, I do it all the time. It's so easy for me to walk in and say, my friend Sunita Krishnan is doing this, give $1 million. And then I'll go in and say, yeah, my salary doesn't matter. It's sort of like, but I think we have to get over this thing of it's okay to ask for yourself, your health, your money, what you need. There's nothing wrong in asking for it. But I still have a huge mental block to it. I feel kind of odd, but I have to, it's sort of like this, you hate doing, but you have to do it. It's sort of, you push yourself.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I have to push myself a lot. People who know me don't believe that, but I do.
No, but great. I think we got some really good tips. One is think that you have options when you're negotiating, because that gives you a lot more power to negotiate. Ask, because if you don't ask, you will never know what you're getting. And third is believe in your value, because if you believe that you are valuable, the other person will start believing that you're valuable. So ask with that belief.
Can I just add one to that? And this is a very Google-centric view, maybe. And this is beyond salary and all that. I think in the business context, and we are negotiating every day. I think what has worked for me significantly is, and what I keep saying all our leaders, is wear that one Google hat. Because today you are representing this function, tomorrow you are representing that part of the business. But if you, and I say that step back, and if you were Philip or if you were Sundar, what would you be thinking about it? And then suddenly it makes you open up with a lot of possibilities. And that's wherein you connect with your opponent or your adversary, whatever adjective you want to put. But that's wherein the meeting ground kind of happens. Because many a time I think we are negotiating, but we are all on two different pages, and the twain shall never meet kind of a syndrome happens.
Which is a question, what is right for the users, what's right for Google?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's fair. So I think we're ready to close, but I do want to open it to audience questions. But before I do, I just want to talk about, just summarize things that everybody has said. So Anu, you spoke about personal branding, evolving, building it on your strength, and building a consistent story, and you do that through your poems, poetry, writing. Ritu, you spoke about using digital media and writing as well, and really working on people perception, value system, and pushing your strength forward. Great anecdotes there as well. Arijit, you've always, I know even in the past when we've been in meetings, you've always spoken about Google as a brand, Google Hyderabad as a brand, and spoken about persistently asking for, consistently asking for the right message, which is dependency and dependability. And Lakshmi, you've been amazing in terms of working on storytelling with people, and really all the anecdotes you gave about being authentic and being out there. Before we close, I just wanted each of you to give one thing that you'd like a corporate audience to live with.
I think I always look for, it doesn't matter corporate audience or whoever, I think it's wonderful to find amazing heroes around us and celebrate them. So one of the things that bugs me when we say who's your role model, all our role models are Western, or they're cricketers, or they're film people. We don't look at amazing stories that are happening around us. And I think instead of looking for inspiration somewhere else, I think the inspiration is right around you. And I think it's the person who comes, works in your house, your neighbor, your local grocer, whatever it is. I think we need to find great stories around us. That's what I value.
Anu?
So I think it's most important that you know who you are well, and if you need help in that, we'll help you do it with a genetic test.
Very smartly called Genome Patri.
Nice plug. So what I'll share here is not necessarily for a corporate audience, but it worked for me because I've spent like 14 years in corporates. There's a lot of things that we all want to achieve in life. A lot of us have bucket lists, stuff we want to do. We're always wondering about how it's going to pan out, where we're going to be, how is life going to play out. I keep one motto for myself. It is every 2-3 years I say, what do I really want to be good at? What do I really want to be good at? Like kick ass at. And then how do I figure out how to do that? And that's why my life has been fairly exciting, because every 3 years I say, now what do I really want to be kick ass at? And now I'll figure out how to be kick ass at it. It just keeps life exciting and vibrant. So figure out what you want to be really good at, and then figure out how to get there. The journey will be interesting.
Yeah, I think summary is be who you are, be self-aware, and leverage your strengths rather than fretting on your areas of development and all that. Just focus on your strength and go the long haul.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Arijit, Ritu, Anu, and Lakshmi. We've been trying to get them for a long time, but finally we could get their schedules to match. Really, really appreciate the time you've taken to talk to Googlers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.